The first kind of giver I want to talk to you about is the reluctant giver. This is usually someone who has not had it modeled in their life. I don't know about your experience, but the very gifted givers that I talk to that give with joy, give generously, are usually people that grew up in a home where their parents taught that discipline to them. Or they might have learned it in the church. Sadly, more people learn it from the family than they do from the church. The attitude of the reluctant giver is, my money is my business. Now, I heard some strains of that's maybe culturally, that's a little bit more the case here than it is in the United States, but let me tell you, there are a lot of people in the United States, and including followers of Christ, who say, my money is my business, how dare you talk to me about giving some of it away. These are the people that get irritated when we ask them for a gift, even if they get a mailing from you. And I'm sad to say this is a larger proportion of Christians than you would know. I don't have any data for you. I would guess maybe 30 to 40% of people in your orbit of influence probably think about giving this way. That's been my experience.
Can I add a data point?
Sure.
So one saddening statistic, but I read this recently, the average percent that the American household, this is an American statistic, so it's going to be different for everybody, but in America, average household gives 2.3% of their income. If you adjust for weekly church attendance, that skyrockets up to a whopping 3%. So sadly, the only difference that being a regular church attender and a follower of Jesus Christ makes is 0.7% in terms of your giving.
And then there's the casual giver. This is the giver that has some understanding of God's call in their life. They've been under the influence of the church and Christian people, and they kind of get the fact that we ought to be giving something back. These are the people that tend to tip God, not give generously. There are people that drop a perfunctory amount in the offering plate. You do offering plates in your churches, do you? Okay. And then there is the thoughtful giver. This is probably a pretty small percentage of those in your orbit. These are people that have thought a little more deeply about God's call on their possessions. These are people that have experienced the joy of giving. They usually need to be asked. These are probably a lot of the people that we will establish that we need to be having conversations with. So again, they're predisposed to think positively about giving. They've had some experience with it, but still a little bit ambivalent about giving. And if their feeling is, if I'm not obedient to Christ in my giving, I'm not fully following Christ. So they understand that, but they probably need to be called to it. Their calculation is, how much of God's money should I give? The casual giver, on the other hand, is saying, how much of my money should I give to God? Do you get the difference there? This is more spiritual maturity, I would say. And then there is that rare few, the gifted giver. I am willing to bet that if you have 10 people in your orbit, or 1,000 people in your orbit, or 10,000 people in your orbit, you've got several gifted givers. These are people that take great joy in giving. They seldom need to be asked for gifts. I heard a wonderful preacher speaking on stewardship, and here was his challenge to the congregation. Are we collecting things with our wealth, or are we collecting stories? The gifted giver loves to collect stories of ministries that they've helped to prosper, of people that they've helped to be more effective in their service in the kingdom. Their calculation is how much of God's money should I keep? Okay, so they kind of get it. God owns everything. Everything that I have, my health and my wealth, has been given to me by God. So that calculation is how much of that do I, as a follower of Christ, feel like I can keep for myself. I want to talk to you about one gifted giver that I've worked with over the years. We're very good friends at this point. And here's what they did. I don't know fully their wealth, but it's significant. And they came to a place in their life with their family, they have 3 kids, where they said, they called their kids together and they said, we want to give you your inheritance now. They said, it's not going to be a lot of money, but this is what we want to give to you. You've all proved that you're faithful in how you handle money. This will help you out in the rest of your life. The rest of our money we intend to give away. The other decision we've made as a couple is we are going to cap our wealth, our net worth. He never told me what that figure is, but he said, we're never going to own more than this amount of money. And everything that we earn or the Lord gives us over and above that, our only decision is who do we give it away to? What a healthy way to live their life. I was once having coffee at the table with his wife and just saying how thrilling this is and I think how radical it is. And she said, Mark, you don't know how hard it is to hold our giving to that level. She said, the Lord just brings money our way that we just never anticipated. Investments that come due, business surprises that they've had, which proves, I think, another verity, and I think it's biblical. It's just impossible to outgive God. He's blessing them for the fact that they want to give as much of God's money back to them as they can in this life. I haven't heard the issue of donor fatigue come up, but I think about this as I think about this couple. We had built a building on our campus. We were having the dedication of that building. This couple had quietly given the leadership gift. If we wouldn't have had that gift, that building would not have happened. Nobody at that gathering knew that they were the givers. And at the dedication, he called me into one of the new conference rooms there, and I thought, uh-oh, we did something to disappoint him in this celebration here. And here's what he said. He said, Mark, what's next? He was so thrilled with what his money was able to accomplish on the campus. He was pushing me to say, what can we do next that can be meaningful for the students that you serve? You need to identify those gifted givers, and you need to spend time with them. Your thoughtful givers, those are the people that probably will get on your list that you say, I need to have a conversation with them. They are predisposed to be generous, but they need some help to think through why they should be generous and how their gift can make a difference. The casual giver, I think you need to tell them stories. In your congregation, have people from time to time come and say, this is what God called us to give in this past year. And I'm not talking about amounts, but this is kind of what he challenged us to do. And this is how God blessed us. I think casual givers, I used to be, early in my fundraising career, just give me these groups of people here. Those are the ones I want to talk to. I don't have time for the rest. But I've found, being at one place for a long time, that you can see people's growth in their discipleship in Christ as you work with them. And that's part of the ministry of fundraising, to help, for example, a casual giver feel, you know what? I want to be that kind of giver. and ways that they can do that. And even your reluctant giver, it's a sad fact. There are people that will hang on to their money, rich and poor, till the day they die. But there are others that learn that that's a poor way to live a life. And we're going to deal with all those. You're going to rarely have to ask this person, the gifted giver, for a gift, but you're going to have to let them know what God's doing in your ministry and what could be ahead if you were able to do this. The thoughtful giver needs both information, but they also need encouragement. Your gift of $100,000 could mean this for our program over the next few years, for example. You're more of your casual giver. Those are the kind that you would probably direct mail, that you would send to occasionally, maybe emails, that you would ask for a gift from time to time in a broader way. But they are also people that should also be on your list, that you have a conversation. They might have capacity to give, but have not shown a propensity to give, and you can make a difference. All right, we've been telling you for a day now how important it is to ask. And I'm going to tell you a little bit how I think we as Christian fundraisers should ask. And this is born out of my experience, and it's an American experience. I think a lot of these principles translate well because I think they are biblically sound, and I think they have high regard for relationship and people, not just for transaction. But I'm happy to test that in front of you, things that make sense to you and things that don't. But I would feel if our morning together and our evening together last night would give you the determination and the courage to ask some of God's people for God's money for the work that you do, I think this time will be well spent, and your ministry will be better for it. First of all, you have to make sure that you create capacity in yourself to do the fundraising. We're going to talk about developing a plan, but you have to make it part of your responsibility. I had someone come up to me at the break and they say, there are only 2 full-time people on our team. We are so consumed with all the ministry. How do I even, what percentage of my time should I be doing fundraising? I can't answer that question for you. I can just say you need to be focused on what I'm going to do in the development realm and the fundraising realm in the next year. You need to hold yourself accountable to goals. For example, and I'll talk about this when we talk about a development plan. You might say, all right, I can't spend 50% of my time fundraising, but here are 10 people I will get in front of in the course of the next year. This is what I'm going to challenge them to give. This is the project that I'm going to talk to them about. This is when I plan to talk to them about it, so we're not doing it all in the month of December, for example. We can procrastinate and then do it late. But you need to say, this is important enough to the future of my ministry that I'm going to carve out time to do it. And I'm not about to tell you how much of that time, but I can say if you're not intentional about setting aside time, particularly to solicit gifts, that you will not be effective as a fundraiser. Determine how many relationships you can maintain. It might be 5 or 10. In larger organizations that have a development plan, I will tell the CEO that probably he or she needs to have 25 to 30 people on their list that say, that relationship is primarily my responsibility. And I'll set goals for what I'm going to do with that group of people. The opposite problem of saying, hey, I'm just going to see what happens, what comes down the line, to me that doesn't work. The other is to say, I'm best friends with 300 people. I'll take it from here. I can tell you, you can't be best friends with 300 people. You need to choose who you're going to be intentional with. We need to come to terms how to interact with people of wealth. Here's what I've learned about working with people of wealth. They want authentic relationships. We've already spoken to this, but being rich is not a reason to give. Those of us with more modest means, we just say, if I had that kind of money, this is how I would give it. But wealthy people, by and large, don't think that way. They're motivated by the same things we're motivated in our realm. What do we care about? What do we think God is calling us to support? What breaks our heart out there that we want to use some of our money to alleviate? It's important to know that being a donor is not that satisfying, but being a financial partner is deeply satisfying. Now I'm going to tell something on an organization that I served. I'm on tape here, so I'll be careful. But I think this illustration is pretty important. This person was, of all the potential givers we had to the organization, he was by far the most financially capable. I mean, very wealthy. He was a graduate of our institution, and his giving to us was rather tepid through the years. And we finally got him associated not with the board, but he sat on an advisory board with us for about a year. And he was sitting at that table, and we were talking about the concern that we were dealing with at that moment. And he said something that I will never forget. He said, I always feel with you guys that you're saying to me, with your money and our ideas, we can go a long way. Wow. That was devastating to me. Now, he had never let me close enough to convince him that that wasn't our only approach. But what was he saying to us?
He's only worth the money.
Yep. You're coming to me as an ATM. You're saying, we got it all figured out. We don't need your brains. We don't even particularly need your prayers. If you just give us the money, we know what to do with it. That's not involving a person as a financial partner. That's looking at them as a donor and a donor alone. And I just think that's probably one of the most important things as we deal with these people of high capacity. We already talked last night about the fact that there may be some people that would slip into wanting more control of our organization because of their giving. My experience is that doesn't happen very often, and that's our responsibility to guard against that. But by and large, there are people that would very much like not just to give to us, but to think with us and pray with us about our future. And you as a leader in your organization can give opportunities for people to do that thinking and praying with you. Now that doesn't mean you have to accept every idea that comes from someone. I've been in many situations where people have said, how about this? What if I set this up at your institution? And at that point, I would say, I don't know the answer to that. It's not part of our strategic plan right now. Let me take it back to the leadership and see if this is a viable idea. Sometimes we can come back and say, hey, we've incorporated this because it makes a lot of sense to us. Other times we've had to say, you know what? It may be a good idea, but we don't think it's a good idea for us, and here's why. And to me, that's our integrity as fundraisers to say we shouldn't take your money for this purpose. And by and large, we don't lose a friend for life there. In fact, I think there's a level of respect that you took the time to listen to what they wanted to do and took the time to tell them why you were not going to pursue that. As when we're dealing with the wealthy, it's easy to judge how they live their lives. I remember someone talking about one of our wealthy donors and saying, well, they've got 2 houses or they've got 3 houses. Well, I knew for a fact that they could have 10 houses if they want, and there are wealthy people out there that have 10 houses. And you don't know the kind of giving that they do, the kind of percentage of their giving that they give away. We need to be careful about judging the wealthy. We also need to be careful about coveting the wealthy. One of the byproducts of dealing with wealthy people is you'll spend time in their sometimes beautiful homes, or they'll invite you for dinner at their beautiful country club, or they might invite you on a trip that they're doing. And you kind of think, well, I'm pretty important to these people. I'm entitled to this. And I want to tell you that's probably an occupational hazard of dealing with wealthy people, is saying, boy, I'd love to live like that. And I think our greatest joy can come out of helping them see how their God-given wealth can help grow the kingdom. If you're getting ready to ask, you need to plan. If you don't have an objective going into a meeting, you're not going to have a successful meeting. You got to figure out who you're going to ask. What are you going to ask for? Sometimes you need to ask permission to ask. And I think a lot of you are in the place where you've got some people in mind. These people have financial capacity. They love our ministry. I need to talk to them about a specific gift. But sometimes it's too early in that first conversation to ask for a gift. And maybe that first visit with them, it may be the fifth visit in your association with them, but it's the first one about giving. You might just find out what their passions are in giving. What gives them the most joy in their giving? Sometimes what's on their wall in their living room will tell you what they love and care about. And very often, this is an opportunity for you to say, you know, thanks so much for sharing, frankly, about what you love and care about. It sounds to me like this evangelism, this child evangelism project that we do year in and year out is very interesting to you. Would you be willing for me to just kind of think through a proposal and come back and have a conversation with you about this in a few weeks? Now, my experience has been there are very few that have sat and poured out their heart about what they care about, what they enjoy. They will say, no, you can't make a proposal to me. And this gives you a perfect opportunity to come back. The next appointment's an easy appointment, isn't it? You call them and say, hey, I've done some thinking about what we talked about, and I've got a proposal I'd like to talk to you about. Can we get together? And that is a good way to move toward a solicitation visit. Does that make sense? Then when am I going to do this? Like I said, if we don't make a plan, if we don't say, I need to talk to these 3 people in the first quarter of next year, if you don't make those kind of goals, it's probably not going to happen. And then we'll have to talk about this a little bit, but you need to determine how much you're going to ask them for. I don't think every solicitation is a specific ask for a specific amount, but I think more solicitations than not should be. We need to anticipate objections. Let's think through now what's been their relationship with the organization. They had some real issues with the last CEO. You need to know that going in. So you can anticipate objections they would have. Or if they said, for example, I can't give that amount. Well, would there be ways where they could give that over several years? Let's go back. Whoops, sorry. I think you could do a grid. This is what I have done very often over the years, and what I encourage my clients to do. If they have a campaign to raise $100,000, I would say, all right, let's talk exactly who you're going to ask, what specific thing are you going to ask for, when are you going to do it, in what context. For example, this person is ready for me to make an appointment and have a conversation with. Or there might be someone on that list where you say, you know, they really need to know more about the ministry before they can give. Let's do a couple of small dinners in the course of next year, and they need to be at the table at one of those dinners. That's part of the planning that you need to do. And then what are you going to ask them for? If you need a $10,000 gift to make that $100,000 project work, you would say, by God's grace, that's how much I'm going to ask them for in this conversation. Does that make sense? Have a plan, and it's much easier to work that plan. Other aspects of asking well. Relate regularly and relationally. Not every gift should be about fundraising or about money. Rich people are people too. They have other interests. I met with a very successful businessman once, and he said, I don't need to meet with any of the salespeople that come in to my company anymore. Other people meet with them. But there's one person, when I see that he's coming to visit, I always make sure I spend time with. And the reason, he says, I figured out why. Because every time I talk to him, he adds value to my life. He either has something cool to say about what he's learned about family, or what he's learned about a new aspect of the business that we're in. I enjoy talking with him because he's a person of interest. I determined early on in my career as a development officer, I'm not oriented financially, and I deal with a lot of people that work in the financial world. And I just determined that to the best of my ability, I would be at least an interesting person for them to talk to. And part of that discipline for me is reading the Wall Street Journal every day. I read the New York Times every day, just to kind of be aware of the environment that people that I'm interacting with are part of. Light, thoughtful touches. I'm sure a lot of you do this already. When I read an article, for example, that I say, so-and-so would love to hear that, I just shoot it off to them. Was thinking about you when I read this. I thought you would find this of interest. It just tells them that you care about them as a person, not just in terms of what they can give. Just a note, for some reason you were on my mind when I woke up this morning and just wanted to check in. Let me know if there's anything I can be praying about. That can be an email, that can be a phone call. Do things together that they enjoy. Their only association with you doesn't have to be something related to your ministry. If they like football, did I use the right phrase there? If they like football and you guys have passion for the same team, invite them to a game. Learn how they want to interact with you. This was mentioned earlier on today. Some people need high attention and high touch, others don't. Often when I'm working with a person of high capacity, they're usually a very busy person. I thank them for their time and I say, you know what? It's really important for us to keep you up to date on what's going on in our ministry, but we don't want to inundate you either. I certainly want to be able to meet with you at least once a year, but tell me what would be best in how can we relate to you as an organization that would be meaningful to you. Find out what's important to them and then abide by it. And then I already talked about being an interesting person. That's just part of our own personal development. All right, let's talk about the meeting. You've figured out who you need to talk to. You've got that appointment. By the way, if at all possible, you are meeting with, if it's a married couple, you're meeting with husband and wife, not just one of them. Sometimes you talk to the person who's not the financial decision maker in that couple. It's important, or you get someone who is, but if you find someone that doesn't care as much about your ministry as their spouse does, you've got an issue. So try to meet with them together. Here are elements that I think are important. Be gracious and grateful. Always start out the conversation by saying, I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but your faithful support over the last 5 years has made a huge difference for our ministry. And I just want to thank you for your faithful giving. People don't give, by and large, they don't give to be thanked. But when they are thanked, it adds joy to their gift. Listen way more than you talk. You heard Joel say that the world thinks that the best fundraisers are fast talkers. The best fundraisers are great listeners. Ask thoughtful questions. I gave you a couple of them. You know, what gives you the most joy in your giving? Tell me about that picture of grandkids on your mantle. Be direct. I've been in some meetings with others where we were doing a solicitation where the person who was supposed to do the solicitation did everything but ask. And finally, the donor says, now, was there something you guys wanted to talk to me about specifically? Be direct. They wouldn't let you in their living room if they didn't think there was giving as part of what the discussion would be. If we take the time to model this, we'll talk about how to be more direct. When it's time to ask, be confident, and you can be confident because you've done your homework. You've thought through what you think God has allowed you to ask them about. Briefly recap the project and its relationship to your mission. You've supported us for the last 10 years. You love that we do this. The project that we have in mind is this, and it's going to cost this much, but we need some partners to launch this project. They need to be reminded. And by the way, I've never been with a major giver who wanted to know where our 4-color brochure, 30-page brochure was so they could look through all the pretty pictures about our organization. Most people we're talking to already know all that about our, please tell me what you want and what it'll accomplish. We can do that on one sheet of paper, if not verbally. Recap the reason for the ask. Our best discernment is if we don't have these gifts, we can't accomplish this. Tell them the project needs significant gifts to flourish. And you can show them, we'd have to work out, and by the way, if you want some work on a gift table, shoot me an email. I do these in my sleep, and I can just say, here's something that you might want to consider as your lead gift and some of the other gifts that you might need. Don't forget to preface it by saying, this isn't the only way the money comes in, but history tells us this is probably how money has to come in for this to happen. So show them that, and that helps them see what you're talking about, what you might be talking about. Some, particularly at the high levels that you're talking about, you might just need to say to them, you see our lead gift here is $10,000. We don't know what your financial capacity is. We don't know who else you're giving to, but I think you might have capacity to provide that gift for us if you had a mind and a will to. So that's why I'd like to ask you to consider that gift of $10,000. And then very often I would either ask, like I just did, would you consider a gift of $10,000, or we need 5 people in this range of $2,500 to $10,000. Would a gift in that range make sense to you? And then the hard part. Then just be quiet and listen to their answer. They need some time to think about it. What they tell you next will tell you a whole lot. I think when I get to the end of this, I might tell you about my very first fundraising call. It'll give you some perspective here. But I was given this advice early, and it's not to make the person uncomfortable, but it's to allow them to respond, to think, ponder, and respond. Sometimes we're quick to say, if the 10 seconds seems like 10 minutes, we say, if this isn't a good time for you to be thinking about that, or if you want to think and send me a note later, we can do that. Wait and see what they say. And there are different things that they might say. With God's grace, they might say, we'd like to do that. Or they might say, we'd like to think about that. What does that tell you? It probably tells you they have the capacity to do it. They just haven't decided if they want to give that gift. Now, what do? Do you say, hey, jot me a note or give me a call when you made a decision? No, you need to keep the initiative and get back to them. Answer any questions or objections graciously. The last thing we want to be is defensive about the organizations that we serve. As representatives of our organizations, our job is not to tell people how perfect we are and how successful we are as an organization. If we do that, people won't believe us because first of all, they see how we operate, and secondly, they know we're a human institution. So to me, it's a very winsome thing to say, we don't do that the best way we can, but here's how we're working on that. Answer any questions or objections, and some of them may be questions that you can't answer at the spot. I've been in situations like that where they've said, well, what's the actual square footage of this building that you want to build? And I say, I'm embarrassed. I should know the answer to that, but I don't. But I'll get you the answer before the end of the day. If they make a commitment, you need to confirm that commitment. If you're in a campaign, and I'm not sure, I don't think we're talking about campaigns today, then you might want a written letter of intent. The other thing might be just to send a follow-up note within a day that says, thank you so much for taking your time. If I understood what you said, you're going to fund this $10,000 lead gift by December of next year. Please let me know if I've got any of that wrong. Otherwise, we are thrilled with this, and we'll keep you informed as we go along. My personal preference is, and I give this advice all the time, if it's not in writing, it's not a gift. There are some organizations that say, oh, I'm sure they're going to give that $10,000. That's what I took out of that meeting. If they haven't declared that in some concrete way, you're foolish to think that that's a commitment. Following up. Thanking well is such a Christian grace. It's also an important way to not only keep that relationship, but to deepen that relationship. And as you think about saying thank yous, say thank you promptly, not a week or a month after the commitment or the gift arrives, but within a few days of when the gift arrives. I would sometimes send a quick email, hey, your gift just came through today. I know you're going to get the receipt and you'll get a letter from our president, but I just wanted to let you know that the gift is received and how meaningful that is to us. Thank in writing. Thank with variety. As leader of your organization, people kind of expect to hear from you. I can tell you what donors love to hear from. They love to hear from recipients of what their gift has done. So if they're supporting ministry people out in the field, you can thank them for that, making that happen, but it's much more effective for someone on the field to say, with this piece of equipment, this is what God has allowed us to do, and I've never had the freedom to be able to do that before. That's thanking with variety and thanking well. And then to thank over time. I came to an organization once that was anxious to do a capital campaign. And we did what a lot of organizations do. We had conversations with some of the key givers from the last campaign. And here's what we heard more than we wanted to hear. Boy, we haven't heard from you guys since the end of the last campaign. That's an occupational hazard. I can tell you, we work hard on making our fundraising goals. And when that's done, we kind of wipe our hands and say, phew, well, on to the next thing. Well, that giver has given a big part of their life to a project. And so we made it very intentional that we thank someone not just when they gave the gift, not just when they completed their commitment, but we thank them 5 and even 10 years down the line. This, at the 5-year anniversary of a building that was built, we were able to say, we just wanted to let you know, and we wanted to let our students who are here now, that weren't even students when you gave this building, tell you how much they're enjoying this building on our campus. Thanking over time is really important. It's the best preparation you can do, and it's the best cultivation you can do for the next gift, is by thanking well. And always with the planning. What did you learn from that time with that giver? You might have learned something about their capacity. If you ask them for $10,000 and they say, you know, I'm flattered that you think I can give that, but we cannot give that with our other obligations. That's a learning point for you. You'll learn about their propensity. You'll find out where your organization ranks in their giving priority. You might come away saying, you know what, they care deeply about us. That's besides their church, this is their highest giving priority. You might learn about their level of generosity. You can, as people talk about what they love in their giving, you can see if that's a gifted giver joy in their face or a thoughtful giver joy in their face. Or there's someone that says, you know, people are always coming to me and asking me for money. That tells you something too. And then, of course, finding out what gives them joy in their giving. I asked the question just like that. And that's a question people don't get asked very often. And it makes them ponder and declare what they really care about. Just a few reminders here. If you don't ask, you rarely receive. Did we mention that yet? You're not asking for yourself. You're asking for the sake of Christ's kingdom. That's where a lot of us get hung up. It's like we're asking that for us, even in personal support raising. There is a sense in which we're asking that to support what we're doing, but the money they're giving is so that they, through us, can minister to people that they couldn't minister to any other way. If you are in love with and give to the mission, you will be an effective fundraiser. Joel said it last night. People can smell a mile away if you're not sincerely in love with what you do, if you're not giving of yourself and in other ways to the ministry. No one is offended by a winsome ask. I don't think any of us in this room would say to someone, I can't believe that you would even ask me for a gift. I think we would say, oh, how neat that they've thought that through and they've asked me to consider what I'm going to do. The decision is another thing, but I don't think people are offended by a good ask. I've said this before, but it's a good reminder. God is a generous God, and we are most like God when we are giving. So what you are doing is helping people be more gracious as God has been gracious to them. We usually get what we plan for. If we say, hey, I'm going to let the Spirit guide me this next year, maybe some unexpected gifts will come, maybe it'll come at the spur of the moment. I'll say, I can ask them for a gift. I can just tell you in my whole life, when we make plans, God is able to work through us in a better way. And then, what if someone says no? That's probably our biggest fear, isn't it? We hate to be told no, and I'm the same way. But in my experience, no very seldom means I'm never giving to your organization again. Don't ask me again. It might mean not now. This is not a good time in my business or in our family life to be making a commitment. It may be not that amount. Pleased that you think I can give that, but I can't give that. The highest gift we're giving is $3,600 a year to another ministry. Well, that tells you something there. So there are a lot of things that people mean by no, and people that have told me no over the years have ended up being, first of all, great personal friends, friends of the ministry, and donors to the ministry. Sometimes it's the process of finding out what they deeply care about, and maybe what we anticipated they would care about is not one of their deepest needs. So we hate no, I hate no, but that's not the end of a relationship if you hear a no in a solicitation.